All right, man. Peace. So NBA great Kobe Bean Bryant had both of his jerseys retired by the LA Lakers, both number 8 and number 24. Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman are going to debate over which number they feel he had his most impressive accomplishments. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Antonietta, thank you. Big night for Kobe Bryant tonight. As Lakers will raise both of his jersey numbers into the rafters at Staples Center, he will become the first player in NBA history.
Look at Gordon Hayward, lame ass. Man is 40 years old, and you chasing behind him like you a member of the Washington Generals. What kind of defense is this fool playing? Maybe it's good for his ass to sit out the season and watch the Boston Celtics from the bench so he can come back and learn how to play some damn defense. Kobe Bryant just dribbling around his ass like he's the one, like Kobe's the one who's 26, 27 years old, and Gordon is 40.
History to have two numbers retired by the same team. Incredible. So in the spirit of debate, let's take a look at both sets of stats. He played 10 seasons at each number, nearly the exact same amount of points, had more titles as number 8, but had...
Well, he had more titles as number 8 because he played with Shaq, who was the greater player, the more impactful player, bottom line. And I know a lot of the Kobe fanboys are going to get upset by that. I really don't give a shit. There's a reason why he won 3 titles. Look at the finals MVPs, though, while wearing number 8. Big fat 0. Now, for my druthers, in my opinion, I think that he was a far better overall player as number 24. Now, if you want to talk about in which number did he have his most spectacular moments individually, then, of course, number 8. That's when he was the high flyer. That's when he had the afro. That's when he was dunking over people. That's when he had a lot of his most spectacular individual feats. But number 24 understood the game on a far higher level. That player, Kobe Bryant, from I would say about 07 to about 2011, I'll even give him till 2013. That player was on a far more cerebral tip than number 8. Anyone who watched the games understands that for every great game that he had as number 8, he had about 2 games following that where he would just make terrible decisions. Of course, we all know that Kobe Bryant was a basketball wonderkind. He was a natural. And what made him a natural was not just his physical gifts, but his drive and his love for the game. But if we're going to appraise his overall basketball acumen, there's no comparison between number 8 and number 24. Number 24 actually started to approximate some type of leadership skills while under the stewardship of Phil Jackson. So I give Kobe credit for that. I think that most of the Michael Jordan comparisons are actually moderately feasible when you view Kobe while wearing the number 24. That's when he actually started to understand the game. To me, the number 24 Kobe was almost on the level of where Jordan was in Jordan's last year with the Chicago Bulls. He was almost right there, but not quite. If you look up Jordan's stats in his last year with the Bulls, he had about the same stats as Kobe during that era had. About 28 a game, on about 46.5, 47% from the field. Please understand, Kobe Bryant never once in his career even shot 47%. He never shot higher than about 46.5%. So he was a volume shooter. Michael Jordan had multiple seasons where he shot well over 50%. So that little stretch from about 07 to about 2011, 2012, he had a very poor season. Then he got the procedure done in Germany. He came back. He had a great bounce back season in the 2012-2013 season when he ended that year by tearing his Achilles. That, to me, is the closest that he came to approximating Jordan in regards to combining the physical with the mental. Number 8 was a far more spectacular player, but number 24 was far more intelligent.
If it had 2 finals MVPs as number 24.
And one of those finals MVPs probably should have went to Gasol, to be quite honest with you.
Max, which Kobe was better in your opinion, 8 or 24?
This ain't an easy one because they were both phenomenal.
For sure.
But number 8 was more phenomenal. The argument is always when an athlete's career is divided into 2, one of the greatest of all times, like Kobe. which half was better. When he was younger and more athletically gifted and more ferocious and more attacking and more aggressive, or when he got older and wiser and had a more well-rounded game and all that kind of stuff, more mature. And I always go with the young, hungry guy, the guy who just attacked, the guy whose physical gifts were such that your jaw would drop, that you couldn't believe what you were watching. Muhammad Ali had his greatest victories post-exile in his second career, Foreman and Frazier. But when, the Sonny Liston Muhammad Ali, that dude was the best who ever did it.
Yes, but it's very difficult to compare a team sport athlete with a singular sport athlete, a solo sport athlete. But I understand what Max Kellerman is trying to get at there. But it's very, very difficult to make that comparison because the young Muhammad Ali had all the skills of the older Ali, but with greater reflexes and greater speed. Now, the older Ali was of course wiser and stronger, but he also took a lot of silly risks that he would not have had to take when he was younger. When you're talking about a team sport, what makes the accumulation of wisdom more feasible and more necessary in a team sport is because you learn how to integrate your teammates into the overall system, which improves your chances to win. In a singular sport, you don't have to worry about that. So that's why you have to always factor in wisdom a little bit more than verve and explosiveness in one's youth. I mean, look, I always say this, when you look at Kobe, there's a difference between Afro Kobe and bald-headed Kobe. Just like there's a difference between Afro Dr. J and shorter hair Dr. J. There's a difference between Jordan when he had the Caesar as opposed to Jordan when he was bald. If you look back at Jordan's highlights when he had the Caesar, in those highlights, somebody's getting dunked on. When you see Dr. J with the Afro, somebody's getting dunked on. When you see Kobe with the Afro, somebody's getting dunked on. But it's when Jordan, it's when he lost his hair, when he learned to understand the game greater. Same thing with Kobe. That's when the team success came. So it depends on what you're trying to evaluate. Are you trying to evaluate based off of the criteria of singular exploits or highlights? Or are you trying to evaluate and discern and decipher based on how much better he was able to make his team, due to experience and wisdom?
Michael Jordan in his second three-peat was a more well-rounded player, had a better jump shot, the fadeaway, all that stuff. But the first three, you know what kind of numbers Michael Jordan was putting up? You could not stop. He was an attack animal. And
the first three-peat Jordan was an overall better player than the second three-peat Jordan. The second three-peat Jordan was much more patient. But what the second three-peat Jordan had was a group of teammates who also were far more experienced, and all those players were very, very comfortable in their role. That's why they were so much more successful during a regular season. That's why those teams won 72 games, 69 games, 62 games, because of the fact that everyone on that team was very, very comfortable in their role. The first three-peat team, Jordan was a better player, way more explosive. He was an even better jump shooter, even better from long range. You could look up the stats. Every season from the 87-88 season to the 91-92 season, Jordan shot well over 50%. It wasn't even close. It wasn't like 50.1. He shot well over 50%. And then the 92-93 season, he dropped off and shot about 49.5%. That second three-peat Jordan topped out at 49.5%. So the first three-peat Jordan was definitely a better player. Not only was he more explosive, but he was also more proficient. Kobe, as he got wiser, was more proficient. So you can't make that comparison.
And that was Kobe. Kobe was a savage as number 8. Yes, he was playing on the same team as Shaq, so he had to defer as much as it was possible for Kobe in order to win championships. No, he didn't win finals MVPs because you had the big guy in the middle, as great as Gasol was. He wasn't Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, but you can make a case that Gasol could have got that MVP for 2010. And I know people are going to get upset by that. I don't give a shit. Gasol was excellent in that series.
So he wasn't the lead guy. He was 1A. He wasn't 1 on that first three-peat, but he was the best overall version of himself. not overall, not as well-rounded, but the highest peak Kobe was number 8. Plus, that's the guy I just like watching the best.
Yeah, well then just say that shit. Stop trying to qualify it. Just say that you were more excited by watching Kobe jump over people while he wore number 8. That's more acceptable than that other bullshit you was talking about.
He was something different. That's the closest to a prime Jordan.
Well, once again, Matt.
No, that's ain't nothing close to a prime Jordan, dude. When you're talking about a prime Jordan, you have to look at other players. You have to look at Magic Johnson in the late 80s, Larry Bird in the mid 80s, Hakeem Olajuwon for that short little stretch in the mid 90s, for players who were as dominant as Michael Jordan. Right, LeBron James in the early 2010s. Those are the players that have approximated Jordan's dominance.
Again, Max Kellerman makes both arguments, trying to leave nothing for anybody else to say, but I'll try my best by going
I learned
with
that
number
technique
24.
from you in the A block today.
Actually, I take my positions, and I'm very clear about how I feel. Nobody knows. Nobody would ever accuse me of dancing around issues. You could give Fred
First of all,
Astaire lessons. Just
we
stop
could
it.
see that Aaron Rodgers' arm wasn't good enough,
you
but
interrupted.
what we really learned about was Cam Newton.
I'll let you talk. You got more to say?
Stephen A. Smith must be on his menstrual.
You got more to say? I'll let you have a second to
The
yourself.
thing you're accusing
I'll
me
let
of
you have
now,
it.
he did 5
You
minutes
do it every
ago.
day. Take a damn position and leave something else to somebody else. That's all I'm asking. Here's the deal.
I took
Number
8.
24.
I took
Number
8.
24 is where I'm going with it. And it has nothing to do with who's better or worse. It's who I prefer. I prefer the guy that took on the challenge of having to produce without Shaq.
What challenge? He ran Shaq out. He ran the coach off. He ran all his old teammates off. He didn't have an option but to perform without Shaq. You always have these revisers of history. Kobe never left. That nigga was trying to get traded. Jerry Buss looked at him and said, "Look, nigga, you're not going nowhere. You're our property." Now, what we will do is, we're going to call up Commissioner Stern. We're going to have a trade arranged so that we can help you out. Well, you ain't going anywhere. So sit your black ass down.
I recognize the fact that the guy scored 81 when he wore number 8. But I'm thinking about the fact that when he wore number 24 and he had to produce after Shaquille O'Neal left, his first season, he had 10 plus games where he dropped over 50 in one season. I'm thinking about the league MVP. I'm thinking about the 2 NBA finals. I'm thinking about the pressure that he had to show up and respond to because he was perceived as being the individual that got rid of Shaquille O'Neal.
He wasn't perceived to be, he was. Stephen A. Smith is one of these guys, and this is why many people have a hard time trusting the mainstream media, whether it's sports media or whether they're talking about news that is supposed to be current events. They like to revise or alter history so that they can create a narrative based off of who they want to protect. Kobe Bryant is someone who Stephen A. has used as an informant in regards to what's going on in the Laker upper management. So Stephen A. will always try to gloss over many of the seedier aspects of Kobe's history.
The most dominant big man of our lifetime. I'm thinking about the dude that demanded he wanted to be traded.
Good. Bring that out.
I'm thinking about the dude that went on my radio show back then and said, I'd rather play on the planet Pluto than remain in the Los Angeles Lakers uniform.
Hey, how come none of these Kobe Bryant fanboys, how come they never talk about that? I always see them on the internet talking about how Kobe Bryant never left LA. He never wanted to leave LA. Now Stephen A. is on here talking about Kobe Bryant said he'd rather be on Pluto.
Because he had felt betrayed by the organization, which ultimately forced Mitch Kupchak and those boys to go out there and pull off the heist of the decade by getting Pau Gasol for Kwame Brown. I'm thinking about that dude that had to play multiple positions. I'm thinking about that dude that had to elevate himself into being a leader instead of just a scorer. I'm thinking about that guy that sat up there and everybody was talking about you ain't gonna do anything without Shaquille O'Neal. It's about here and now. It's about what you gotta do, and you gotta show and prove because everything is on you. And I'm also looking at a guy that did something that the Lakers in the first three-peat never did, and that's beat the Boston Celtics.
Well, first off, that is a totally irrelevant comment. The only way that comment will be relevant is if they had played the Boston Celtics in the finals during that initial finals run and never beat them. They never played them. So it's very, very difficult to say, well, the second title run with Kobe, they beat the Boston Celtics and they didn't beat them under Shaq. They never played them. If they had played the Boston Celtics during the time period where Shaq was the preeminent player on the Lakers, they would have beat the Celtics. So that is really just an unnecessary addition made by Stephen A. Smith to try to augment whatever frivolous theory he's trying to advance right now.
For an NBA championship. The Los Angeles Lakers didn't have that luxury because Boston wasn't good enough to get there. They beat the Indiana Pacers.
Then that's why you should never have mentioned them.
They beat AI in the 76ers. They beat Jason Kidd, Kenyon Martin, Richard Jefferson.
Yeah, let me say this. That first three-peat team with the Los Angeles Lakers, they probably had the weakest NBA Finals competition. A lot of times, especially you get this from the LeBron James super fans. They come on the internet and they want to tell you about how Jordan never played anybody in the finals. No, you know who didn't play anybody in the finals? Kobe Bryant. They faced one good team in the finals, like one really good team, and that was the Boston Celtics. And you know what? I'll give them the Pacers. The Pacers were good, but they were old. Reggie Miller, by 2000, was in his 13th season. He was 35 years old. That was the first time that he got into the finals. I believe their second best player was Rick Smits. They were counting on Jalen Rose for points. Now, Jalen Rose was a nice little scorer off the bench. Mark Jackson was also 35 years old. Chris Mullin was 37 years old. Like, that series, if it wasn't for Kobe's heroics in Game 4 after Shaq fouled out, that series might have been very, very dicey for the Lakers because they did not know how to win yet. And then 2001, they played the Philadelphia 76ers, which was a one-man team. In 2002, they faced maybe the worst team to ever make it to the finals in the East, in the New Jersey Nets. And then Kobe wins it in 2009, where he beats Dwight Howard and the Orlando Magic. And I give them credit for that finals. I mean, any team that you face in the finals, you have to give a great amount of respect to. But that team, the 2009 Magic, nobody's really going to remember them as being a team that actually was a threat. That is why, even out of Kobe's own mouth, he will always tell you that the greatest accomplishment in his career was beating the Boston Celtics, not only because of the lore and the mystique of the Celtics-Lakers rivalry, but because that team had 3 Hall of Famers on it and a player who was trending towards the Hall of Fame before his injuries in Rajon Rondo, as well as the fact that Boston had not just beat them in 2008, but beat them down mentally. If people remember, in Game 6 in Boston Garden, Kobe Bryant was taking 40-foot threes because he was scared to drive the lane because they were hammering him every time he went to the basket. James Posey was shutting him down on the outside. And what's my man name from the Memphis Grizzlies? Tony Allen. That's who it was. My man had Kobe on lock in that Game 6. I was like, damn. That's the worst I saw Kobe get locked down since Tayshaun Prince. When Tayshaun Prince had put that man in Rikers Island.
And the New Jersey Nets. But they weren't able to go up against the heated nemesis that is the Boston Celtics for NBA lore. All of those things are things that I prefer. I can't take anything away from the young line that we saw on the come up. But the maturation process that ultimately showed its head, that was number 24, which is why I love that number, because it's all day. And that's what Kobe Bryant was about, particularly after the departure of Shaquille O'Neal. He knew that he had to be that dude.
Instead of saying 8 or 24, it really should be 8 for 24. That's like the average game that Kobe would have, 8 for 24. Motherfucker hit a left-handed three-pointer. People like, yeah, he was 8 for 24, but did you see that three-pointer shot he hit with the left hand?
See, what are you scared of? You have plenty to say. What are you worried about? Take your point. You have plenty to say, Stephen A. It's okay. It's going to be all right. By the way, that Kwame Brown trade...
Go ahead.
Don't forget that Kwame Brown trade included Marc Gasol. That was a win-win. That trade was a win-win. Like Memphis, everyone was like, oh, they robbed them. No, Memphis came off in that trade, too. It was right time for the Lakers to grab Gasol.
Yeah, but Gasol elevated back. You'll agree with this. Gasol came on later. Like at that time when the Lakers were making their run, Gasol wasn't that dude. Now ultimately you won later on. You know it was a win-win later on because of what Gasol matured into. But during that 3-year period, after the acquisition of Pau Gasol, Marc Gasol wasn't relevant at that particular moment in time.
Of course, but that's what I'm saying. That's why it was a win-win, because Memphis wasn't about to win a championship. So they got building a great building block for the future.
That's true. And I've even got caught up in that narrative sometimes with the Kwame Brown trade. And many Laker fans have reminded me that, yes, Marc Gasol was included in that trade. So Memphis did get a fair share. They did get a fair deal in that trade. But at the time, they didn't know how good Marc Gasol was going to be. So that's why that trade was perceived to be such a heist. And it's still perceived to be a heist. And it probably always will be. Because of just the energy around that trade when it occurred. It was like, what? They basically traded Kwame Brown for Pau Gasol. Like, even though Pau Gasol even though he wasn't an all-star, like, oftentimes Laker fans, when they try to prove that Kobe was, this super dominant player all by himself when he won those 2 championships, they'll try to denigrate Pau Gasol by saying that he did not make an all-star team. You have to understand, during that time period in the NBA, in 2006, 2007, you also had Tim Duncan, you had Dirk Nowitzki, you had Kevin Garnett. He wasn't going to make the all-star team, period. During that era, he was very similar at the power forward position or the center spot, because he tended to play a little bit of both. But he was very akin to like a Damian Lillard today. Damian Lillard is a great player, but he's never going to make an all-star team. He's never going to make an all-star team unless one of these top-notch players like a Russell Westbrook or a Stephen Curry or Chris Paul, one of these players has such a debilitating injury that they cannot play in the all-star game. He's never going to make an all-star game. So you can't really use all-star games to, as a parameter for how great a player is or how effective he is. Now, Pau Gasol was not what I call a dominant player during that era, but he was a player who was extremely competitive against the top-notch guys in that conference during that time period.
And meantime, the Lakers got a piece that put him over the top. And of course, as you mentioned, Kobe, the mature Kobe, could take a guy like Pau Gasol, who's a great player, and win championships as the MVP.
Extremely skilled, too. And even though they'll try to deny it today, especially people who are trying to promote the Kobe Bryant Superman narrative, during the 2009-2010 season, they were viewed as being the most talented team in the NBA. They were definitely viewed as having the greatest front court in the NBA with Pau Gasol, Lamar Odom, and Andrew Bynum.
I'm saying is, when he was number 8, let's not let Shaquille O'Neal obscure his greatness. I mean, I don't think he does, but sometimes it's easy to say, well, he wasn't even the best player on the team. The way Kobe describes playing with Shaq, he's like, what if Jordan got to the league and Wilt Chamberlain was there, right? Well, yeah, they three-peat too. But all of a sudden, it's like, damn, there's not a lot of touches to go around. Hey, Mike, maybe you want to feed the big guys sometimes. And I think Kobe always bristled at the idea that he had to do that, and somehow Shaq's presence didn't really let you see all he could do.
Well, you know what, the difference between what Jordan would have done if he would have been in a dynamic where he had to play with a dominant center like a Shaq or Wilt Chamberlain, I think that he would have been far more amenable than a Kobe Bryant was, because Michael Jordan was used to playing in a system while in college. Because Kobe has always been in a system that was dictated towards him and his skills, it was a very, very difficult transition for him to come on a team where he was not the number one guy. And then, of course, he had a huge focus for himself, which is nothing wrong with that. But Michael Jordan was already used to sharing the ball while in college. So I think that would have been a far less difficult transition for him, even though after a while his true nature would have come out. He is an alpha. Michael Jordan is an alpha, just like Kobe Bryant is or was. So there may have been some friction after a while between Jordan and a guy like a Wilt Chamberlain. But I think that the greater amount of friction between Shaq and Kobe wasn't even so much about who was going to be the top guy. I think it was also predicated on their differences in personality. Shaq is a fucking clown, and Kobe is very, very serious. And that is going to grate on someone when you always have a guy who's a big fucking clown all the damn time. There's nothing wrong with having a sense of humor. Different people have different senses of humor based on their intellect. Like Shaq's humor is more slapstick. You have other people who have witty type of humor, that oftentimes is an offshoot of their intellect, because when somebody has a high level of intellect, they have a high level of perceptual abilities. When they can perceive a lot of different things, they can comment on them in a humorous way. That's not Shaq. Shaq is a fucking fool. And I could see how that can grate on someone like a Kobe Bryant, who was clearly very intelligent.
Of course, by the time he got Gasol and Shaq wasn't there,
very similar to a LeBron and a Kyrie. LeBron is intelligent as well, but LeBron is also, he's also an overly emotional. I'm trying to figure out the right word that I want to use. I'll just say an overly emotional person, but he does have many simplistic. He does have many simplistic personality alters about him. That I can see how it can become very frustrating and infuriating for somebody like a Kyrie to be around him. Kyrie seems to be someone who takes things in stride and always tries to apply a balance towards everything that he's dealing with. LeBron is someone who is emotional and is an attention monger, very much like Shaq.
I don't think physically he was quite as quick, quite as springy as he was in the first three-peat, where he was.
You don't have to
force of nature.
You don't have to think about what Kobe may have felt. He said it publicly.
Agreed.
That's why he wanted life without Shaq.
All right, gentlemen. Kobe, the first player in NBA history to play 20 seasons with a single franchise. Stephen A. is there for the festivities covering it. I'm jealous, Stephen A. Enjoy all of it. It's going to be a special night.
But anyway, that's the discussion on Kobe Bryant and which jersey he was better in. I think that the term better should be in quotes, because when you use a term like better, you truly have to qualify that. Better in what way? In my view, better means it means pertaining to a style of play that was more conducive to team success, since we're talking about a team sport. And there's a little doubt in my mind that number 24 Kobe was a much better player because his style of play was more conducive to his team winning. Number 8 was a phenomenal athlete. He was a phenomenal performer, and he was a phenomenal player as well. But Kobe really spent like the first 7 or 8 seasons in the NBA trying to learn who he was as a person. That's why you'll notice that it was around that time period that he came up with the number 24 number change, that he also came up with the Mamba mentality, that philosophy. That was him trying to find himself and who he really was. But anyway, good for Kobe Bryant. He is an all-time great. He deserved this ceremony, the feting that he received from the Lakers. And I'm sure that he has a lot of other things planned for his future life, so good for him. Anyway, peace.